Have you ever noticed that when someone you love is struggling, that you cannot be okay unless they're okay? Maybe they're dealing with a difficult relationship. Maybe it's a health concern. Maybe it's a decision about their future. It could even be a problem that they're having at work or some other uncertainty that's going on in their lives that they are struggling with. And almost immediately, your mind goes to work. You begin thinking about what they should do, and you start researching all types of solutions or information that can be helpful to them. And you begin to think about what they should be doing. And you imagine everything that could go wrong. You catastrophize and futurize. You might even check in with them repeatedly. Are you okay? How's this going? What did this person say? And you try to prevent them from making what you believe could be a life altering decision or mistake. And sometimes you become so consumed with their problem that it begins to feel as if it's yours. Their anxiety now becomes your anxiety. Their disappointment becomes your disappointment. And their choices begin determining whether or not you have any inner peace. And we can call this love. That's the weird part. We call this love. And we tell ourselves that we are simply being caring and kind and considerate, supportive, responsible, or even protective. But what we are actually experiencing is enmeshment. And enmeshment is one of the ways we can unknowingly lose ourselves in relationships. Hey, and welcome to Masks Off Inner Freedom for People Pleasers and Perfectionists. This is a podcast for those who are tired of holding it all together. I'm Kim Gross, your host. And if you've ever felt like you're doing all the right things, but still feel anxious, disconnected, or quietly burned out, you're in the right place. Here we talk about the patterns you don't even realize you're living inside of: self abandonment, over functioning, chasing approval, and mistaking productivity for your worth, and more. This isn't about fixing yourself. It's about remembering who you were before you learned to perform, perfect, and please to belong. Each week, we'll slow things down. We'll unpack the nervous system, the inner critic, and the subtle ways that you learned to disconnect from your true self so you can stop living from pressure and start living from presence. This is your space to take the masks off. So let's begin. This month, we are exploring the different ways that we lose ourselves in relationships. We lose ourselves by being overly agreeable. We keep our needs silenced and even unnoticed. We can shapeshift and turn ourselves into pretzels to be the person who we believe that someone else wants us to be. We avoid conflict because we're afraid of being rejected. And there's another way that we leave ourselves or abandon ourselves in relationships, which might be less obvious than these others that I mentioned. We can become so emotionally involved in another person's life or another person's feelings, problems, outcomes in their lives that we no longer can tell where they end and we begin. Today, I'm going to talk about enmeshment, what it is, why it happens, and how it can keep us from becoming free to be our true selves. And that is the ultimate message that I share over and over again on this podcast, is that my hope, my wish, my desire for you is that you can become free to be your true whole self. And I want to be honest that these patterns have shown up in my own life, particularly in my relationship with my children. I can say with honesty that I have often and can still become enmeshed with my children through trying to fix them, worrying about them, and rescuing. At times, I have believed that being a good mother meant preventing them from struggling, making mistakes, or experiencing pain and suffering. But now I am beginning to understand that there is a difference between loving someone and trying to manage their lives. There's a difference between supporting someone and trying to rescue them. And there's a difference between being connected to someone and becoming so emotionally entangled or enmeshed that we abandon ourselves. What is enmeshment? Enmeshment occurs when the emotional boundaries between two people become blurred. It can mean that we have difficulty recognizing where our feelings, our responsibilities, and our identity end and the other person's begins. What does it look like in a healthy relationship? In a healthy relationship, we can be deeply connected to another person while still recognizing that we are two separate individuals. We can care about what they're experiencing without believing or thinking that it is our job to control it, to solve it, or to carry it for them. But in enmeshed relationships, another person's emotional well-being or emotional state starts to impact or determine what our emotional state is like. So if they are upset, we become upset. If they're disappointed, we feel responsible. If they make a choice that we disagree with, we may experience it as though they did something to us personally. At the core of enmeshment is often this belief: I cannot be okay unless you're okay. You know, there's this saying, a mother is only as happy as her happiest child. I think something like that, something along those lines. In other words, that a mother is happy if her kids are happy. And if her kids are not happy, then she's not happy. And it's such a paradigm shift to believe that as parents and as a mom, that I can be happy even if my kids are not. Enmeshment can also sound like this. If I truly love you, I should be able to prevent you from experiencing any pain or any suffering. And this is where enmeshment can become so confusing because it can look like love. We may believe that the more we worry about our loved ones, the more we care. We may believe that if we're not actively fixing or helping, that somehow we're abandoning the person that we love. I always used to feel like if I don't fix whatever my kids are going through, whatever issues they would be having at the moment, that somehow I wasn't being a good mom. But healthy love, healthy relationships does not require us to take over someone else's emotional life and to be the commander in charge. In fact, healthy love says, I care about what you're experiencing. I really care. And I'm here to support you. But enmeshment says, I need to change what you are experiencing so that I don't have to feel the discomfort. Healthy love says, I have full trust and confidence in you that you can navigate your own life. Enmeshment says, I do not believe that you can handle this without me. Healthy love says, I can listen to what you're going through without immediately having the need to have to solve the problem. Enmeshment says, I feel responsible that I have to make this better for you. And I want to make this clear that enmeshment doesn't mean that there isn't actually love present in the relationship. I'm sure that there is. I'm sure that there is real love between you and the person in your life. The problem is that the love has become mixed in with or all jumbled up with fear, anxiety, control, and over responsibility. So, how does enmeshment cause us to lose ourselves in the relationship? One of the biggest things that I have noticed for myself about enmeshment is that it pulls my attention completely away from myself and it focuses outward on everyone else, mostly my kids these days. And instead of being connected to my own internal experience, I become consumed, obsessed at times with what my kids are experiencing. So we stop asking, what are we feeling? What do we need? What's going on inside of me right now? And instead, all of our attention goes toward the other person. And we begin asking, well, what's going on with them? Are they okay? How can I prevent them from making a huge catastrophic mistake? And that is one that comes up over and over again for me with my kids. How do I prevent them from making a big mistake or making that decision? But what I've had to repeatedly remind myself is, how do I know what the future holds? Do I know for certain that what I fear is going to happen? I have to come back to that over and over and over again. Having wisdom and having lived on this earth for 57, almost 58 years, I have learned some things and I could make an intuitive guess or prediction, but I don't know for sure that what I fear for them is going to happen. So that is a really helpful way for me to ground myself. Again, how do I know that it's the best choice for them? Things that have happened to me in my life, I would never have predicted or expected that my life was going to go in that direction. And sometimes it was really hard and I struggled and I suffered and I had pain. But because of it, I am where I am today. So, how do I know that the struggle that my kids go through aren't in their best interest? I don't know that. But every time I go to the place of thinking all these thoughts and worrying, this is a form of self abandonment. We tend to think that self abandonment is just silencing ourselves or denying our needs, saying yes when we want to say no, or making ourselves small. Those are all examples of self abandonment, but so is becoming overly focused on another person. It's subtle, less obvious, but it is still a way in which we abandon ourselves because we may spend hours thinking about their lives and barely noticing what's going on in our own. How many times have I woken up in the middle of the night or woke up in the morning and the first thing I do is go to thinking about a problem that one of my kids is experiencing? And sometimes we might even stop doing the things that are good for us, that nourish us, because we're so preoccupied with another person. Or we might feel guilty about being happy and living a fulfilled life when our loved one is struggling so much or when they're unhappy. I know I used to feel that way when I was a kid, and if things were going well for me in my life, but my friends or even my cousins or a family member were not doing as well, or they were having a really hard time, I would feel guilty about being in such a good place. We also may try to remove natural consequences of their choices. When my kids were younger, I did it all the time. I tried to save them from the natural consequence. If my daughter, when she was a teenager, spent all her work money or allowance money and she didn't have money to go and do something with her friends, rather than allowing her to feel the natural consequence of not having the money to go do what she wants to do, I would give her the money. I know. When I say it out loud, I hear it. And we know better, we do better, hopefully, right? Sometimes some of us might feel personally rejected if our loved ones don't take our advice. I can remember all the time that my mom would be infamous for giving advice. And if you didn't take her advice, she would get so upset and take it so personally. What I'm saying here is that the person we are focused on becomes the center of our attention. And then we slowly disappear from our own lives. And then one day we wake up and say, who am I? What do I even want to do with my time? What do I do with all of my mental energy if I'm not focused on someone else's problems? Now, I have been sharing throughout the episode so far about my enmeshment with my kids. And I want to just say that honestly, enmeshment has been a really, really big thing for me. It's a pattern that I have been stuck in. I've gotten so much better, but it is one that I still work at today to unhook from. And I love my children deeply. I really, really love them so deeply. And because I love them, I don't want them to suffer. I don't want them to make choices that are going to cause them pain. I don't want them to be rejected. I don't want them to be disappointed. I don't want them to be hurt. I don't want anyone to take advantage of them. But what I have recognized or come to believe is that my desire to protect them, to want to protect them, can quickly become my attempt to control their lives. When one of my kids is struggling, my inner controller becomes so activated, so activated. She wants to fix, she wants to worry, she wants to rescue, she wants to anticipate every possible problem and she wants to make sure that she does her job to make sure everything turns out okay. And here's the sad part. When my inner controller takes over, I am no longer able to be present with my child in that moment because I become more focused on managing the outcome or managing my child by getting my child to do something differently rather than just being present. My nervous system is activated and I'm just in this fight or flight. So, how could I be fully present if I'm in that place? I can't. Fixing is one of the rarest ways that this shows up for me. Fixing is a big one. And whether it's my son or it's my daughter sharing a problem with me, I want to just go right into solving mode. Giving advice is usually the biggest way that I try to fix for them is to give advice and say what they should or shouldn't do. And my mind starts to go haywire, trying to come up with all kinds of ideas. Sometimes I'm even using Chat GBT to research and see what solutions they are. I offer all kinds of possible scenarios like, did you think about this? Or what if this happens? What if that happens? Like, I am infamous for doing the what ifing. And if you don't know what ifing is, it's, well, what if this happens? What if you don't get the job that you thought you were going to get? Now you don't have money to pay your bills. And what if you have to go 6 months without having any money? What is all that going to mean? And what if you spend all your savings and you have nothing left? Or what if, what if, what if? And all that does is create so much anxiety for me and then for them as well, because they can feel my anxiety. They can feel my fear, my lack, the scarcity. And then underneath that is just this underlying message that you cannot handle it on your own. You are not capable of handling whatever is going to happen. So, one question that I am starting to ask myself is, am I actually giving advice because they asked me for advice? They asked for help. They requested it of me. Or am I trying to fix because I can't tolerate the discomfort of something being activated in me? And it's a difficult question. It's a really difficult question because sometimes when I'm giving the advice or fixing, it looks like love. It looks very loving. It looks like I'm involved, I'm concerned, I'm being responsible. I care about what's going on in their lives. It looks good on paper. But if I'm being really honest, it's my inability to tolerate uncertainty. Another pattern that I play out very well is worrying. My mom was a major worry wart, and I used to hate when she would worry all the time. When I was young and as a teenager in my 20s, I just didn't like it. And now, lo and behold, here I am doing the same thing. And it's just another way that we become enmeshed. Once again, it can look like love or it can feel like I'm being loving because I'm worrying. It can feel as if I'm trying to do something productive. But at the end of the day, my inner controller believes that if she keeps worrying about this particular problem, then she'll find the answer. If I stop worrying, I might miss something important, my inner controller says. If I just relax and I let go and I surrender, aren't I just being careless or unconcerned? And then, of course, there's this belief that as a good mom, I'm supposed to worry. If I'm not worrying, doesn't it look like I'm being cold hearted and I don't care? But worrying does not and has never protected my children. I can honestly tell you that my worrying hasn't helped a thing. It really hasn't. It just simply removes me from the present moment and it puts me inside of this imagined future. Again, futurizing, catastrophizing, and it causes me the anxiety. It causes me to suffer about something that hasn't even happened. This mental activity just makes us feel as if we're doing something. It makes us feel as if we have some sense of control. That's why we do it. That's why our inner controller is doing because she thinks she's being productive and busy and hyper vigilant. But what it does in the end, what it actually does is it disconnects us from living our own lives. Another pattern that I have played out probably since I was 7 or 8 years old is rescuing. Rescuing happens when we try to prevent another person from feeling any type of discomfort, from pain, from suffering, and sometimes even from the consequences of the choices that they make. So we might smooth over a conflict. We might bail somebody out financially. You might even bail somebody out of jail. You might pay for things that they want to do but can't afford to do. We can make excuses and explain away a person's behavior. And it can look like love once again, like we're trying to help them out. We're trying to prevent them from the pain and the suffering. But rescuing can sometimes communicate that I don't believe that you're capable of handling this. And I have had to ask myself whether I am actually helping my children become stronger or whether I'm trying to remove every experience that makes me uncomfortable. And I cannot say that enough. I cannot hone in on that point enough that all of this is about me making myself feel more comfortable. And at this point, I've had so many honest conversations with my kids because they're adults now. And when they can sense or feel that I'm feeling uncomfortable with the situations that they have going on in their lives, and I'm trying to fix or rescue, save them, they will say to me, especially my daughter has said, "It is not my job, mom, to make you feel more comfortable in this." I just want to say, if you are a parent and you are going through this and you are struggling to let go and let your child just live their own lives and not interfere, not be enmeshed, not manage, it's really, really hard. So, what is underneath enmeshment? Why do we become enmeshed? And why is it so hard to allow the people that we love to have their own feelings, their own trials and tribulations, their own journey, their own path? Well, there can be several different root causes as to why we become enmeshed. Some of us, for one, grew up in families where the boundaries were unclear. You may have had a mom that was very enmeshed with you. And you may also have had an experience where you had to take care of a parent emotionally. You may have learned that you had to monitor everybody's moods to determine if the environment was safe. I know, again, I said that it started for me around the age of 7 or 8, where I felt the responsibility to make everyone in my family happy and to keep the peace. That was my role, was to be the peacekeeper. And it was so much pressure, such a burden to carry that. And what did that look like for me to be the peacekeeper? Whenever there was an argument or there was conflict or there was some big, huge fight going on, I felt the responsibility that it was my responsibility to somehow calm everybody down and to get in the middle of it, prevent the conflict, making sure that everyone was okay even after the fight. If my mom was in a huge fight with one of my cousins, then I would feel like I had to go and make sure that that cousin was okay and talk to him about it. Another reason that enmeshment can come about is because we have a fear of abandonment and we unconsciously believe that if this person no longer needs me, then they'll leave me. Or if I'm not overly involved with my children, especially as they get married and have families, if I'm not very involved, they will forget about me. Just simply telling ourselves that we have to stop fixing, to stop worrying or rescuing may not work because these behaviors were serving a protective purpose. The fixer is not just some type of bad habit that you have. And the rescuer is not just simply a control freak. The worrier is not trying to ruin our inner peace. These parts of us, these patterns, are just trying to protect us. They may be protecting us from guilt. Maybe it's from feeling helpless, powerless. It could be from feeling uncertainty, from feeling like we're a failure. or from the fear that we're not going to be needed anymore. All of the things that I have been mentioning so far throughout the episode, this is what we're trying not to feel. And that's why our inner controller works so hard. She believes that she has to stay alert and she has to anticipate all the things that could happen. She has to prevent the mistakes. She has to fix the problems before they become even bigger problems. She has to keep the relationship intact. She has to protect the wounded part of you from feeling helpless or rejected, ashamed, abandoned. So what does she do? She steps in. She swoops in and she says, I have to do something. I can't just sit here and let my child struggle in this way. They're making the wrong decision. I have to stop them before they make this life altering decision. It's my job to protect them, prevent them from some catastrophe. I have to convince them. I cannot relax until this is resolved. So that's why she worries, she fixes, she advises, she monitors, she performs, she perfects, she over functions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then she becomes enmeshed because she believes so wholeheartedly that controlling the other person's experience will keep her safe. She honestly is not trying to destroy our relationships. She's trying to protect us within the relationship. That's the key. What does that mean? Well, she might believe that if my child, for example, makes this catastrophic mistake or decision, that I will have to experience unbearable guilt, that it was somehow my fault. And as I said before, my inner controller believes that if I'm no longer needed, by my kids, that I will no longer matter. So I don't want us to shame this part of ourselves. This isn't about shame. It's not to say that you are that you are a control freak and you need to stop and what is wrong with you. We're not trying to make ourselves wrong or bad for showing up in this way. The goal is just to understand why she's so afraid that if she takes a step back, something bad is going to happen. So you could say to your inner controller, you could place your hand on your heart and you could say, I see how scared you are. I know that you believe you have to solve this. I know you think it's your job and you have to keep everyone safe. And I know that the uncertainty feels so unbearable. But this person's life, the person that we are trying to save or rescue or fix, that person's life is not our life. And we can love them without controlling them. We can support them without micromanaging, without taking over. We can allow them to make choices and decisions, even when we would do something different. We can survive the discomfort of not knowing. We really can. The problem isn't that our inner controller shows up. The problem is that she completely takes over and we lose that connection, that contact with our true selves. So we become the fixer, the rescuer, the worrier, the perfect mother, the one who keeps it all together. And underneath all of those masks is a self who may be asking, who's saying, What about me? What am I feeling? What do I need? How do I want to live my life? What does my life look like when I'm not trying to focus on everybody else's life? What can I do? What will I do with my time and the energy? What is my life asking of me? And then, of course, who are we when we're no longer needed? That's the fear, right? The fear is that we may not matter if we're no longer needed. And when our kids are young, and this is the trap, because when our children are young, they do genuinely need us for everything. They need us to feed them, clothe them, protect them, take them places, teach them, make decisions. It's very clear when our children are young what our role is. But the problem becomes when those children become adults and the relationship doesn't change. You're still showing up in the same way. Now, do they still need love, even if they're adults? Of course they do. And they still might need guidance if they ask for it, but they don't need us to manage their lives any longer. And that transition can be so difficult. So difficult. Because if being needed has been a large part of your identity, you may unconsciously keep finding ways to remain indispensable. You might continue to give the advice. You may insert yourself. I mean, I know that my mom, almost up until the time when she died, she was always inserting herself into my life. And I do believe part of it was she just wanted to be connected and didn't know how. So she would put on the inner controller mask and she would give advice. She would ask questions. She would try to solve my problems. And we may become overly involved in our kids' relationships, careers, their finances, their health. I just found myself earlier today saying to my son about that if he continued to eat all the sugar, which of course I still do, right? I haven't totally gotten away from sugar, but that if he keeps eating the way he's eating, he's going to end up with some serious health condition. Now, do I know that for sure? No. I mean, is there a good probability? Yes. But do I know that tomorrow he could decide to completely turn his life around and change the way he eats? And even if he doesn't, that's his journey. That's his journey and it's his path. When we become so focused and involved in the lives of our loved ones, and we are always thinking about their needs, their desires, their dreams, their hopes, everything, and all their struggles, when we're so overly involved in the lives of a loved one or all of our loved ones, that we have little to no connection to our own desires, our own dreams, our own interests, and our own inner life. Stepping out of enmeshment creates more space for your loved ones to become the people that they are meant to be and to become more of who they are. But it also creates space for you to discover who you are. And that is the goal. Once we do stop focusing so intensely on another person's life and we start to return to our own, it can feel very unfamiliar at first. And you're going to want to go back to the old way many times of just thinking about somebody else instead of focusing on yourself, because we've spent years doing this pattern one way. So if we've spent years worrying about our children or rescuing family members, comparing ourselves to other people, we may not know what to do when that space opens up originally. So we can begin asking, what needs my attention in my life right now? What have I been avoiding by focusing on everybody else? What does bring me joy? What am I curious about? What do I want to create in my life? What relationships nourish me and which ones don't? What dreams have I put aside? What part of me has been waiting for my attention? And this is the gift. This is the blessing of moving out of enmeshment, that we get to take our life back. So before I close, I just want to invite you to a short reflection. Think about one relationship in your life where maybe you are experiencing some enmeshment. Maybe it is with your child, maybe it's a partner, maybe it's your mom, your dad, a sibling, even could be a friend, someone that you care deeply about. And then I invite you to ask yourself, whose emotions or choices regularly determine what you feel each day? Where are you fixing? Where are you worrying, advising, or rescuing? And then ask yourself, what are you afraid would happen if you stepped back? What feeling are you trying to avoid? And what responsibility have you taken on that may not actually belong to you? Are you offering support, or are you trying to control an outcome? How could you remain loving and connected without without micromanaging this person's life? And then finally, what part of your own life needs more attention? And then take a deep breath. Remind yourself that you can love deeply and still allow your life to belong to you. You can remain connected to you without disconnecting. So, in closing, you do not have to become cold or detached or indifferent. You are learning that love does not require you to manage another person's life, that their feelings are not always yours to fix. In fact, they probably really never are. And their choices are not yours to control. Their path is not proof of whether you are worthy or not. Your inner controller, she's still going to be frightened at times. I can promise you that. She'll want to worry. She'll want to fix. She'll want to rescue, compare, advise, take over. But you can begin to meet her with compassion and remind her that you understand she's trying to protect, she's just trying to keep you safe, but that you don't have to abandon yourself anymore to love another person, that you can stay connected, you can stay loving, and you can stay rooted in who you are. This is how we begin to take off the masks of fixer, worrier, rescuer, and the perfect parent. This is how we come home to ourselves and how we become free to be our true selves. If this episode helped you to recognize a relationship where you might be fixing, worrying, rescuing, comparing, then take one small step this week. pause before stepping in and remind yourself that their life can belong to them and your life can belong to you. And we can still love each other deeply. As we wrap up today's episode, I just want to say thank you for being here and for taking this time for yourself. If this episode resonated with you, I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe to the podcast or leave a review. Even a quick star rating helps more people find this space and reminds the algorithms that these conversations matter. And I'd love to hear from you. If you have a question, a takeaway, or something that came up while you were listening, leave a comment or send it in. Let's keep the conversation going. This podcast isn't meant to be a one-way street. It's meant to feel like a community. If you want to learn more about me, my work, or the ways we can go deeper together, you can visit my website. All the details are there. Until next time, take a breath, take the mask off, and be gentle with yourself. I'll see you soon.